My sister's ex-partner attacked me and her child, 10 years apart. I've always been a heavy drinker, but nothing serious had ever happened to me until my sister's ex-partner attacked me. My sister and I have a 7-year age gap. Our mom married his dad, but she never wanted kids and was always on birth control. However, he started hiding her pills, and she ended up getting pregnant with me. As soon as my sister was born, he abandoned my mother for another woman. He started a new family and cut ties with my sister, wanting nothing to do with her. This pattern seems to have repeated itself in my sister's life. No one ever wanted her. My father entered my mother's life when my sister was just a baby. My mother always made it clear to him that he was not my sister's father and shouldn't interfere. My mother struggles with mental health issues. My mother has struggled with kleptomania and hoarding, especially later in life. As the oldest of 9 children, she was forced to be the household servant, while her siblings were allowed to attend school. She took out her frustrations on us as we grew up, often being verbally and physically abusive. My sister bore the brunt of her anger, suffering constant beatings and belittling. By 12, my sister had run away from home, living on the streets and eventually joining the 18th Street Gang in Los Angeles. One of the most traumatic experiences I witnessed was when my sister got arrested for truancy, and my mother's punishment was to shave off all her hair. I was only 5 years old, but I remember trying to defend my sister. That moment solidified my resentment towards my mother. Despite their toxic relationship, my mother and father are still together, but he never formally married her. My mother got pregnant with me in a desperate attempt to trap my father, but he already had 7 other kids. Surprisingly, it worked. He raised me with love and care, unlike his other children, and instilled in me the confidence and determination I have today. Meanwhile, my sister got pregnant at 17 with a man she didn't end up with. She later dated her friend's brother Tony, and they had a son together. So by the time everything happened, my sister already had a son with Tony. As I mentioned earlier, I had a history of excessive drinking. My mother introduced me to cigarettes at age 10 and got me drunk for the first time at 12. By 14, I was drinking daily. I attracted a lot of male attention and had a steady boyfriend who was 21 when I was just 14. He would drive me around and be always available. Despite my tumultuous home life, my father showed me love and care, driving me to school every day and giving me a daily allowance. I've always been self-sufficient and known how to take care of myself. My parents didn't exactly parent me, but my father was more like a friend. I got away with a lot because I stood up for myself and made things happen on my own. Some people might say it's because of my looks, but I believe it's because I know how to work hard and make things happen. I used to host huge parties at home, where dozens of teenagers would show up every weekend for years. I even organized backyard punk rock shows. My sister never had those experiences, but I had just turned 18 and thought it would be a good idea to party with my sister for the first time. I headed to a party down the street where she was, but when I arrived, she was leaving. She was with Tony and his cousins, and they invited me to join them at her place. However, there wasn't enough room in the car, and I would have to sit on someone's lap. My sister, who was already disabled and suffering from lupus, told me not to sit on her lap or the cousins, but to sit on Tony's lap instead. The short drive to her home, less than 5 minutes, was long enough for Tony to grope me over my clothes, grabbing my breasts and pussy. I was horrified and froze until the car stopped. I quickly jumped out of the car and ran down the street, getting away from them as fast as I could. I yelled that I had changed my mind about hanging out that night. I had previously ended things with a pedophile I was dating, but in a moment of desperation, I called him and he picked me up within minutes. He took me home, where he tried to have sex with me while I cried for hours. There were many reasons I had ended things with him, and this night was a stark reminder of why. I kept the secret to myself. My sister was already struggling with illness and disability, and she had a child with Tony. He was supposed to be taking care of her, but their relationship was complicated. They went on to have 2 more children together, despite warnings that another pregnancy could be life-threatening. Their youngest child was born with a mental defect. I don't have a relationship with this child at all. I've maintained my distance over the years, only visiting my sister's home once for Christmas when I was 26 years old. Tony was not the biological father of my sister's oldest daughter. When this daughter was 17, Tony was driving her to school and assaulted her. She arrived at school in tears, and the authorities were notified. The police filed charges against Tony. During the investigation, the district attorney contacted me, and I shared my own experience of Tony's assault. The secret I had kept for so long was finally out, and everyone knew the truth. After sharing our experiences, my niece and I became outcasts, labeled as no good and fake liars by my sister, who even wrote those words on my niece's shoes. I wanted to protect my niece from this toxic situation. I decided to testify against Tony in court, and my sister retaliated by spreading false rumors about my friend who was supporting me, trying to shame them. But I refused to be silenced, and I fired back, pointing out the hypocrisy of her defending her abusive partner while trying to discredit me. On the day of the trial, Tony accepted a plea bargain, so I didn't have to testify. Since then, my sister and I haven't spoken. It's been over 12 years now. The trauma still haunts me, and I continue to have nightmares. Despite Tony's infidelity and bringing home STDs, my sister remains in the relationship. I believe she feels trapped, thinking no one else wants her, which is why she stays. I'm still trying to understand the situation and make sense of it all. That's the end of this painful memory, one of many traumatic experiences I've had in my life, which I've come to refer to as the stories I can tell you. This is just one of them. Unfortunately, there's another difficult story to share involving my sister's daughter, which I'll have to tell next. It's a continuation of the complex and challenging experiences I've faced.
Story 2.
This has happened to me many times before, but doctors couldn't give me a clear explanation. They just said it might be due to a lack of vitamins. One summer, I was on a chairlift, getting ready to go mountain biking, when it happened again. This time, it lasted for a very long time. Luckily, I had a friend with me who knew what was going on. As soon as I told him, he held me up so I wouldn't fall off the lift. If I had fallen, it would have been fatal. As I sat there, helpless and disoriented, my vision was completely consumed by darkness. It was as if I'd been plunged into a void with no light penetrating the blackness. Despite being blind, I was mostly conscious, but I think I might have lost consciousness for a few brief moments. The next thing I knew, I was being helped off the chairlift, still unable to see a thing. I stumbled and staggered, my feet moving awkwardly as I tried to find my balance. If it wasn't for my friend's guidance, I might have walked right off the platform. Instead, he led me to a chair, where I collapsed, exhausted and disoriented. Someone handed me a water bottle, and I sipped from it gratefully, trying to clear my foggy head. It took about 5 minutes of sitting there, sipping water and trying to calm down, before my vision finally started to return. It was a gradual process, with shapes and colors slowly materializing out of the darkness. Even after my vision returned, I was still struggling to find my footing literally. My legs felt like jelly, and every step I took was wobbly and uncertain. It was clear that I wasn't going to be able to make my way down the mountain on my own 2 feet. Luckily, my friend had arranged for me to be driven down the fire road, which was a huge relief. This wasn't the first time I'd experienced this strange and terrifying phenomenon, and I knew that I needed to take it easy and prioritize my safety. Ever since it first started happening, I've been hyper-vigilant about recognizing the warning signs that it's about to strike again. Usually it starts with a slight disorientation, like I'm not quite sure where I am or what's going on. Then comes the lightheadedness, which can quickly escalate into full-blown blindness and loss of consciousness if I'm not careful. I've learned to listen to my body and take action at the first hint of these symptoms, whether that means sitting down, drinking water, or seeking help from someone nearby.